I'll start with you, Vikki. I'll turn over the mic, and I would love to hear if you have any tips for our listeners about staying healthy and, putting themselves in a high priority when we're using these dating apps where it can feel like we're shouting into a void.
Yeah, I definitely, we kind of talked about it in the kind of initial episode of just how accessible, I think you said it, Marie, like the accessibility of the app.
Yeah.
So I really think it's so good to either assess, do we want to put a good old time limit on the app, right? The time limit we always avoid, right? We always hit ignore, remind me in 15 minutes or whatever. But do we want to just set up some barriers? Because it is with that accessibility, before you know it, we're spending more time. Now, if that's kind of in line with, are we saying, hey, we're at a time in our life where I do want to invest more time into this. I want to be on it a little bit more, talking to a little bit more people. This is kind of in line with my goals for sure. But I think just making sure that timing is aligned with kind of what you're wanting and what fits for where you are in life right now, and kind of keeping a pulse on it of like, okay, maybe I'm not feeling good spirits, I'm spending too much time on there. Do I need to scale that back a little bit? So I do really kind of have people maybe set that up on the front end, just so that, before we know it, we can look at this stuff and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't intend to put that much time on it and all of this.
And maybe an hour and I didn't even know.
So maybe that's like a good thing to visit like beforehand, based on just like, okay, like how much time do I really want to dedicate to this? Because like we said, the accessibility of it can feel a little bit intrusive at times, or just like it's always there. Maybe looking into notifications. How do we want to set up our notifications? That's kind of, these are all like tech things we're talking about, but that's kind of the age of dating in which we're in. So making sure that those are incorporated in would probably be kind of my first, when I'm working with folks, just my first kind of boundary almost to set up with people.
Yeah.
And
those notifications, they do suck you in,
I had to turn them off because they were annoying. Because the app also just like, even if you're not on it, it's telling you to get on it because that's obviously what they want you to do. So and like, I mean, when I first had it, like I would mindlessly swipe because that's all it took. It was just, this one action, to whether or not you like them. So I just felt like it just almost felt like a task rather than something I enjoyed. So it's interesting.
Yeah. So I think really being key about like that time, knowing that the apps want you to be on it. But the more we spend on it, and we see this with so many other apps, is like it really sucks us into like its world, and kind of then we begin kind of just like thinking in terms of it. And like we kind of gestured with like the numbers game, then it can become all about like, what kind of feedback am I getting, or what kind of payoff, I've been this amount of time on it and what I have to show of it, or anything like that. And I think it can be really internally asking ourselves, okay, like, what do we want out of this? I think when it does get tricky is maybe we want validation, right? And if that validation, are we looking for it externally, right? Like, whether it is, hey, I'm feeling really good. I got all these people like hitting me up, want to talk to me, want to go out with me. And that can go sideways equally in the same way of like, hey, I'm not getting any feedback. And it's when those things then like say something about us. I think that's when we know we've maybe got like a negative relationship with it. And it might be good to just like reassess what our relationship is with that. Do we need to take a break? Do we need to scale back a little bit? When you do see maybe it's like impacting our mental health a little bit, doing just an assessment.
Yeah. I love the idea of, checking in with yourself and what are your intentions when you go into it, setting those. And if you suddenly feel yucky about it, or like you realize that you're seeking it for reasons that maybe aren't the best, that, it would be important to take a step back and figure out why you want it. Like, if it's really to make a connection, or if it's just because you feel like you have to, or